Hi, I'm Brian Kessman, and I'm a results leader.
You're listening to ResultsLeader.fm. Being a thought leader is easy. Getting results is hard. This show is for the results leader who lives and dies by their results. Here is your host and Chief Results Leader, Jonathan Rivera.
This is the only show on the internet dedicated to the coaches and consultants who are obsessed with getting results for their clients. Welcome back to another edition of ResultsLeader.fm. So stoked that you're here. And as always, I'm going to share some ear candy with you because that is what we do. On today's show, how getting uncomfortable makes you more comfortable. Tips for becoming more patient and present. Why best practices are BS and what we should focus on instead. The rise of AI. How will AI affect marketing and advertising? And how failure is the absolute best fuel for your growth. All on today's show. My guest, Brian Kessman, is an org design and strategy consultant for growing and merging creative and marketing agencies. He's a super smart guy. We get into some deep conversations, and I can't wait for you to hear it. Let's jump in. Brian, welcome to the show. Are you ready to rock this thing?
I am. Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks for having me.
All right, let's give our listeners a quick win. What book have you given most as a gift?
Well, that is a great question. And I have not given many books as a gift, although you're making me think I should do that more often. I can say, though, there's one book that I recommend in a lot of my work with clients, and that's going to be The Team of Teams by General Stanley McChrystal. Are you familiar with that?
That's the first time I hear that one.
In my work, so I do org design for agencies, right? And so his book talks about how relying on hierarchy and positional authority to manage teams has become really slow and a bit of a hindrance in today's world where teams need to respond in a quicker sense to a lot of real-time events and challenges in work and in life. And so I take that and I apply it to the agency environment because teams in agency environments obviously need to move quickly, work cross-functionally, have a lot of respect for each other's expertise and rely on that when the time's right. And so there may be different people on a team who know best for any given moment. And so this book, the message from there is let the people who are closest to the problems start to solve the problems, give them the authority to do so and the decision-making rights and so on. And so I feed a lot of that philosophy into the work that I do. And so I'm not gifting a book. Maybe I'll start gifting this one, but I do certainly bring it up a lot in my work.
Team of Teams has been added to my reading list, and I am grabbing myself a copy. Thank you for that. Now it is story time, and I want you to tell us a story of how an apparent failure set you up for later success.
Well, so let me see. Do you consider losing a job a failure? I'd put that into that bucket. Going back, let's say 2001, I was working for a .com, and that's when everything went bust for the .coms. And so maybe not a failure, but certainly an unexpected hard time. And that failure or hard time pushed me to really think a little differently about where to go next. I was a lot younger then, so I was uncomfortable with networking. At that time, I hadn't really pushed myself to do that. And so that was one thing. I had to start to become comfortable with some of the things I was uncomfortable doing. And that started to open up new opportunities, which started to fuel, my interest in doing more things that started to make me a little uncomfortable, just to see what other opportunities that I could create. But ultimately, it led to me working for a boutique management consulting firm by way of networking. And I did some IT work for them, some project management work. But working there, I started to take on some business development roles and some business strategy roles. And the reason why I cite this experience is because, one, the experience of working there and having that much autonomy and freedom to do really great work is, again, something that I've carried with me and try and introduce to other organizations, changing mindsets about how to manage and lead in an organization. But also because that management consulting firm was my first exposure to a consulting practice. And there are things that I learned in helping to deliver the work and helping the consulting firm as a whole that I still borrow from today.
All right. What would you say is the most worthwhile investment that you have ever made?
Let's see here. So I don't think there is just one for me. I think there is a theme, though, as I think about these, and it's all underneath the umbrella of self-improvement or professional development, just ongoing learning, right? It's always about unlocking new opportunities, perhaps stemming from my experiences, from my previous answer. But I've always invested in professional development. I haven't waited for any company that I've ever worked for to invest. I've done it myself if I needed to. In college, volunteering for opportunities led to a job in IT. IT led to the first job out of school. Certifications from investing in my professional development led to the consulting job, and so on. And so every new learning experience is just building on the one before it, helping me see things from different perspectives. And so, so I don't think it's, any one thing, but it's investing in learning and trying to find new experiences.
So I heard you say that you don't wait for anybody to invest in yourself. And I have found in talking to many different people that some executives, some people, they wait for the company to invest in them. So what would you say to those people who are waiting for that investment?
They may be waiting for a long time. It depends on what they want for their career, for themselves. You and I spoke once before, and we talked about one of my challenges being patience. And so, I've learned to become more patient over the years. But when it comes to learning new things, I am still fairly impatient there. And if somebody else, though, has the patience to wait for the company to invest, well, obviously you don't know when that's going to happen or if it's going to happen. But especially now with the way the talent market is and the number of layoffs out there, I don't think anybody can really wait to learn. And there's so many opportunities online for free education or free courses. And I read an interesting post yesterday challenging anyone who's been laid off to not think of it as, being laid off or losing your job, but rather think of it more as a sabbatical if you can. If you can get over the initial shock and the hardships, of course, that go with that, but use that opportunity to your advantage in terms of having the time to learn and seek out those new opportunities that are just going to make you better and stronger and smarter for the next opportunity.
Okay, so you do not wait to take the opportunity to improve yourself. You did say, though, that over the years you have become more patient. So as a father, I'd like some tips, man. How do you become more patient?
I'll tell you the one tip right here. I have a little note that says be patient. It reminds me every day, patience, understanding, tolerance. I have some other things here because sometimes in conversations I have strong opinions and I want to offer those opinions right away, but I have to make sure I'm fully listening to the person on the other end and fully understanding what it is they're having to say and what challenges they may be facing. And that's where the patience comes in as well, right? So let me fully understand this situation and then offer also not just my opinion, but perhaps other thought starters or other perspectives that can help, other people get through their own challenges for, better value on their end, but also because my opinion is probably not the right opinion sometimes.
So tip number one, I heard you say, write it on a Post-it note, put it right in front of you and read it often. Tip number two, it sounded like be quiet and listen. So you're actually hearing what's going on before you interject. And was there tip number three?
Well, I believe it was to not force an opinion or to be...
How do you do that, though, as a consultant? Aren't you paid for an opinion?
Yeah, so there's a balance there, right? And I think it comes in with the questioning. Someone will come to me and describe a current situation that they're experiencing in their agency about staff complaining about certain issues or too many meetings or unclear roles and responsibilities, or maybe they don't even know what the issue is. They just know that something needs to change. Well, then the series of questions have to start. I really need to dig a little deeper, but I think the expertise that I've developed from consulting helps me know the right questions to ask and what the meaning is behind perhaps my potential clients' answers and where to go next with that. And so, I think that is part of the real value of consultants. Aside from the objective outside point of view, it's really understanding the meaning of the data that you're getting back from the work you're doing for the organization. I run a lot of surveys, we do a lot of interviews and so on. And so I could see certain meaning in the answers there that others perhaps won't see. So
in the last 5 years, what new belief, behavior, or habit has most improved your life?
This is interesting. I want to say that it's been making the choice to wake up early every morning before everyone else in the house. And so for me, that might be 5:30, 6 a.m. It's quiet, right? I'm able to just focus on what I need to do. I go downstairs, I eat some breakfast, I do some exercise, I come back up, I start to do some work, and everything that I needed to do, any chores or whatever, that's also out of the way early in the morning. The flip side of that, though, is sometimes I'm not the quietest and I might wake up my wife, and that doesn't make my life improve. So there's a balance there as well. But yeah, no, honestly, it's been waking up in the morning. It just helps me really get the day started right. And in the summer, when the sun's up early with me, then it's nice to get outside and just be refreshed from a walk. I mean, it changes the entire day.
All right. So you get up, you do some eating, you get some coffee, I imagine.
Absolutely.
If it's nice out, you get yourself some vitamin D3 and go out and walk. Or you exercise. We're always obsessed with like people's morning routines. That's one of the favorite topics of the show. That's why I'm kind of digging into that. And then you try to be silent and not wake up your wife.
Yeah, that's an important part of this. I'm curious, what other routines have you heard that you thought were especially helpful or unique?
Well, I mean, I sit here and I listen to all you guys and I take what I want and use it for myself. But there's always getting up before the family is pretty common so that you do have that quiet time. And what you do with that quiet depends on the person. Meditation or faith time is usually right in there, depending on how you operate, and then exercise. And then that way, when your family gets up, you're able to be quite present for them, or at least us guys who have little kids who are going to school and all that.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with that. You know, I do want to share two other things that may be helpful. So I sit at my desk all day, right? That's my primary place of business. And so there's an app that I've downloaded. It's called Wake Out app. And every half hour, it gives me a little chime to do some sort of an exercise, and it'll give me a suggestion and a video of what to do with them. And sometimes it's a little silly, but in general, it's every half hour. It's get up and stand or do something. And that's been really helpful in giving me a lot of energy throughout the day compared to feeling drained after just sitting at the desk for a long time. And then the other thing, which has been really important for me, is keeping my phone outside of my bedroom when I go to bed at night. Because it used to be first thing in the morning, what's going on the phone, and then I'm pulled into whatever that is, right? But no, this lets me control. I don't look at the phone until even I'm back at my desk from the morning routine I mentioned.
Yeah, that's powerful. So what would you say are some bad recommendations you hear in your area of expertise? Yeah,
so there are a few, but they all roll up to what I'd say is the idea that there are best practices to follow today. And when things were a bit more predictable before the pandemic, before marketing being the way it is, and the variety of different technology and AI, I don't know if you follow the marketing space and the rise of AI right now, especially, but there's so much going on that you can't really plan for. And best practices are just not a thing anymore. I mean, there's things that we can learn from in how agencies specifically have worked from in the past, but there's a lot of other ways of working that are better suited for the direction the agencies are going today. And so that's where I focus a lot of my work, is trying to introduce influences from Agile and Lean and other areas of management innovation into agencies' ways of working. But it's also, it's not a one and done type of situation for any agency. You have to adopt a system that's going to help your business go on a path of continuous improvement. And so, one of the things I propose instead of best practices is experiments. How can we introduce change in the form of an experiment? What do we think is going to happen? What do we need to do? Who do we need to train? Who do we need to involve? What's the result we're aiming for? Did it work? What did we learn? And let's try the next evolution of that. As opposed to saying, these are the best practices that a consultant will recommend or that I've read or experienced, and let's implement those, and that should fix us up and be, the solution. But it's not, right? We always need to stay ahead of whatever's coming next.
The idea of experiments is really, really interesting to me, because we had our quarterly company meeting and we were redoing our core values, and we put the idea of excellence and experiments as one, because the only way that you can get better is to experiment. And when you experiment, you're going to fail sometimes, you're going to do better sometimes, but that all contributes to your excellence. So I really like that idea of experimentation in business. Now, you talked a little bit about what's coming. Your perspective, what's coming from all this AI stuff that people are talking about nonstop at the time we're recording this?
It's hard to say anything with certainty in terms of how it's going to impact the marketing or the advertising agency space or even in-house teams. But the way I see it going is AI is not just going to exist as AI. It will be embedded in many of the tools that we already use today to make them better in new tools going forward. And so I see it as just something we need to learn in the context of another piece of software. And in that way, it's more approachable, less intimidating, at least from my eyes, right? As opposed to, thinking there's AI out there and it's going to replace jobs. And I don't see it doing that yet. I see it augmenting jobs. I see new roles being introduced. I see other roles being enhanced by the tools AI will provide. What's interesting, though, I think some of the largest impact perhaps in the agency space is going to be the speed at which agencies are able to work with the use of these new tools or AI-infused tools, and how that's going to impact the billable hour, because many agencies sell time. And so how do you continue to sell time, those tools at your disposal, and even your clients having those similar tools? And so one thing that agencies should be shifting to, and many are, is more value-based pricing. But that also then opens up opportunities for a complete shift in the operating model, which is, of course, the area that I study and look at. So I'm excited to see what that's going to look like. I'm already starting to write up some thoughts to really start to show what impacts to prepare for within the different areas of an agency's operating model. And I hope to publish that shortly, but it'll be exciting to see.
Now, we're going to have to dive in and have a little bit of fun, because this is a topic that came up my copywriter meeting this week. And people are talking about being replaced, like we're going to be replaced by AI and AI is going to do all this writing. And I hear you saying AI is an augmentation, something that'll give you maybe bionic capabilities. But what about that idea there? Because I think that is super interesting. Less billable hours, right? So how do we combat that? Because maybe you can just give us your take on this. The way I told my team is the way we combat this AI and all this talk is innovation. We have to innovate on what we're doing. And I hear you talking about an innovation in the value-based model. Are there other innovations that we can be looking at to use it or to grow from it or to differentiate?
That's going to be the challenge. How do you differentiate when everybody has those same tools and can now work in a very similar way? But it still will come back to what are the skills of the human? How do they use it? I don't know how familiar you are with some of the AI tools out there, but with ChatGPT-3 and then the next version of that coming that'll be even more advanced and Midjourney for creating visual creations. All of that's in the prompts. And so humans are still driving that, right? And you're only as good as the prompts that are going to go into the AI. And that's where people need to upskill.
Fascinating. We interrupt your regularly scheduled program for a public service announcement. We're going to get right back into this show, but I wanted to ask you a question. If you have been listening to the show for any amount of time and you've picked up even one single tip, then I need your help. Get the word out. Tell people about resultsleader.fm. Share it on social media. Share it on your email. Share it anywhere. Hashtag resultsleaderfm. Now let's jump back into the interview. Brian, why do results matter?
Well, so results are a form of feedback, right? They're a way of learning. They inform your decisions. And let's go back to the topic of experiments. Maybe an experiment failed, or maybe even a project failed. You didn't achieve the results that you wanted. Well, you achieved a result, and that result was informative. And so they matter in that way. But what matters equally is the mindset that you have when you don't achieve the result that you want. Not looking at a failure as a failure, but rather, what did we learn from it? And how is that going to help us further evolve and become better? So I use the word outcomes in my work rather than results. What do you want to be able to do to achieve? How do you know when you've achieved that outcome? That all of this opens doors to new thinking. I challenge people to think of their work in terms of outcomes rather than outputs for their agency clients. And those outcomes equate to even going back to the pricing model we talked about. What's the value you're providing to your clients? And then how do you change your pricing model based on that?
I want you to think back over the last 5 years. What new realization has helped you get better results for your clients?
Well, the work that I do is or has the potential to be complicated for my agency clients. So I'll give you an example, or I'll tell you more about how the process goes. So every engagement usually starts, and typically every engagement will start with an assessment. And that assessment would include a review of some of their documentation, interviews with some key staff, and an agency-wide survey if the agency is large enough for that. And there'll be a lot of data that comes back from that. And I analyze that data and put it into what I call a NAV plan. The NAV plan is essentially the assessment summary, but the roadmap forward for the agencies to start to implement or introduce change to their organization. You can imagine the wealth of data, and I do provide a number of recommendations for the agency to move forward with. And that is a lot of overwhelming information, or at least could be. And so for me, what has helped me get better results for my clients is understanding what is just the most important pieces they need to know. Still sharing the other pieces, but also being clear about what don't they need to worry about, even though the data is there, but what don't you need to worry about and why? What am I seeing? And overall, just creating an experience from really start to finish to make sure they never feel lost in the process or overwhelmed. Because if they start to feel lost or intimidated, or they feel like just the process of introducing change is hard, then they're not going to go forward with that, and they won't have the results to show. I won't have done what I needed to do for them. And so it's I'm always looking at a way to make sure what's the next task I can take away from them so they don't have to do it. How do I just make it so intuitive and so easy to learn what needs to be done and then to go forward and introduce change?
What area of your business would you like better results?
Well, I'm a small company, and it's hard to be everywhere to generate enough awareness for my business. I've been fortunate to form some really great relationships with some of the industry associations out there, other consultants, other contacts. And so business comes in by way of referral or word of mouth. And that's been fantastic. I've also been doing a lot of webinars, and so that's been helpful. But awareness is really where I would like better results. Because typically when someone finds me, they say, where have you been? There's no one else that I've found that really does what you do. And then it's easy to move forward. And if I can generate more of those conversations, or even just be out there just to offer more of my content to be more helpful to a larger group of organizations, that would be amazing.
What results are you most proud of?
Well, over this past 7 years, I've been able to work with 39 fantastic agencies and help them to redesign their operating models. And I'm really proud of that, but I'm really proud of the feedback that they've shared with me about the impact to their organization, what it's allowed them to do, the alignment they now have internally, and how they're re-energized to go forward. I had one client share 85% of their projects are moving faster than ever before. And I love hearing that. And I'm so glad to see their success, because it's not really what I've done. It's what they've done with the information that I've been able to surface for them. A lot of the hard work is really going to be for them to drive change internally. I can help them. I can coach them. I can give them the tools and the knowledge and the background and everything they need to do it. But ultimately, they're the one who has to move that change forward. So it's just amazing to see and hear clients share those types of stories.
Any parting thoughts you want to share with the results leaders who are listening to us right now?
Well, I'm just reflecting on a lot of the things that we've discussed here, and there were themes that kept surfacing. And I think one was the idea of continuous improvement, or being comfortable with change, or having the patience to even get there. And so I think continuous improvement, how important that is, whether as an individual, as a business, just to not be afraid of change. And I hope there's not many companies that are still afraid of change with what we've faced over the last few years, but It's more important than ever, for sure.
I know our listeners are going to want more. Where can they get it?
Yeah, absolutely. If you'd like more information about Lodestar Agency Consulting, you can check out lodestaragencyconsulting.com. And if you want more than what's there, then you can certainly schedule a free consultation. You'll find the button right on that site, and we can have a chat.
We will have links in the show notes, as always. Thank you, Brian, for hanging out with us. Thank you, Results Leaders, for tuning in. Another episode is in the can. That is a wrap for another edition of ResultsLeader.fm. If you are out there getting results for your clients and you want to be featured on the show, go to ResultsLeader.fm now and apply to be on the show. And if you love what you're hearing, share the show, give us a rating and review, do anything to help us get the message out there. Thought leadership is easy, but results leadership is hard. We'll catch you on the next one.
This is thepodcastfactory.com.